Alright, hello again and welcome back to another Source SDK 101 video tutorial, and today we're going to be talking about room design for Trouble in Terrorist Town. So generally what we're talking about here is how to structure your map so that it kind of creates the engaging gameplay that makes classic maps, and we're going to be looking at 67th Way to get an idea of why people like this map so much. And I'm going to be bringing up a couple other points that I talked about already in my analysis video, which you can check out as well. So to start with room design, generally what we talk about is the multiple exits theory. So any room for TTT that you're going to create should have more than one way in and out, with a few exceptions that we'll get into later. But generally speaking, you should always have more than one way in and out. So this room, for example, has a ladder out and a door, and a window which can be shot through as well. Now this creates a space where someone can snipe out this window, and then they have two options. They can go out on the roof or they can go back into the house. Taking a look at another room, we have windows that can be jumped through, and we have this doorway, and there's even a breakable wood panel here to drop us into the floor below, which also is a room that has windows that can be jumped through and doors that can be entered and exit. So this is exactly what I'm talking about here. You should be having rooms that have more than one way in and out. So with this in mind, these rooms are generally designed for the Traitors, and that's kind of how you should be taking your map, taking your design for your map. You should design for the Traitors, but not make it unfair. So here's another example with many ways in and out. You have these two entrances, you can come in here, and then there's the jump down here. So like I said, design for the Traitors, make quick escapes, but don't make it overloaded with that, because if you overload the map with that, it will be impossible for the innocents to win. So let's take a look at a prime example of not having one way in and out. Would be the underground portion of the map. So this is a classic area here with the Traitor tester, and what we have with this is a room that does not have more than one way in or out. It just has this doorway here. Now the reason this works is because of the tension that it creates, and this tension is created by having this pathway here and the Traitor room, in which Traitors can set off this trap and kill anyone that's stuck in this room when they press this button over here. So this tension creates a risk-reward scenario for the innocents, detectives, whoever, to come into this Traitor room here. And that is the reason why it works with only having one way in or out. If you had another way out of this room that's, say, linked up over here, then this entire section of the map would be pointless, and no one would ever risk it after their first time getting drowned in there. They would always go the other way around, even if it was more convoluted. So everyone wants to stay alive, so there'd be no point, and that is a prime example of using only one way. So you kind of have to mix and match your designs in that way, but again, to really drive a point home, in general, you should have more than one way in and out of an area. You can even see that here as well, and it's just this whole basement area in general has multiple ways to go. So like I said, a lot of this is about risk reward, and something else we'll talk about with that is vantage points. Another example of what I like to do as only one way entrances, so you can only come one way to a vantage point. And something that comes to mind, it's not really featured as much in this map, but in rooftops as well as in island, you have the lighthouse, and in rooftops you have the one long tower where there's only one way up, but you get a vantage point over essentially the entire map, so where you could snipe or see anyone. And that's a perfect example again of a place where you have only one way in or out, but you have such an advantage there that it makes sense to counteract that. If you had more than one way to escape, then it would just be far too easy. So it increases the use of teleporters for the Traitors or detectives, but it's a great risk-reward scenario. So The other thing I want to talk about with design, and this kind of extends past rooms and also goes more into just general layout design, is map cycling. So the way that Trouble in Terrorist Town works is essentially you're doing two things as an innocent. You're waiting and then you're investigating. So you're going to spend your time, most of your time, waiting and just running around the map. And people love to do circuits. This is a classic one, to just bounce between these buildings. Likewise, some people like to run the whole section here. They'll go in between these areas and the underground. But generally, it's just cycles, people moving in and out of spaces constantly, which is talking about, again, brings us back to having more than one way in and out. Because people don't want to go into a room where they have to come back out the same way if they're doing this. They always want to have an option, and you're going to make players feel trapped if you don't give them another way out of a space. So if this room was all sealed up and just had this doorway here, no one would ever come into this room because they would be terrified to go in there, because as soon as somebody follows them, there's going to be, this fear, and they're most likely going to be killed. So there's definitely a lot of cycling that goes on, and you need to take that into account with your map design to have ways in and out. So like, this is a good route, come in here, go out through the back, and then you can cycle around, come in the back of the house and do a little circuit here and investigate these separate areas. So finally, I'll talk about hiding spaces. So again, this kind of breaks the two-way rule, but serves as, attention breaker or attention creator. Having these little rooms like this allows for places for people to hide if they need to. Generally, this is for traitors. You should try to limit these spaces because they're not usually that fun to engage with unless you absolutely need them. So you should try to think about placing them in key areas where they might help in case of a quick escape or something, or somewhere where you can easily hide and get away from somebody and protect yourself if need be. So that's all I wanted to talk about with map design in terms of rooms and the theories behind that for TTT. So thank you and have a nice day.